what we can do.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report X World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has named spy chief Budanov as the new chief of staff. This comes after the dismissal of Andriy Yermak, the longtime chief of staff. China says President Xi will host South Korean President Lee Jae-myung from Sunday, signaling a push to strengthen ties. It is their second meeting in 2 months, with Beijing emphasizing economic cooperation and tourism amid regional strains. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry urges Yemen's southern factions to pursue just solutions through dialogue in Riyadh. The call follows the UAE's agreement to withdraw troops after clashing with Saudi forces. Iranian police say they understand protesters' economic demands, acknowledging demonstrations as civic expressions seeking better living conditions. However, authorities warn security forces will not tolerate chaos. United Nations General Secretary Antonio Guterres urges Israel to reverse a planned ban on 37 NGOs operating in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. He warns their work is vital to humanitarian relief. Swiss authorities say sparkler is fixed to champagne bottles likely caused a deadly New Year's fire at a bar in Crans, Montana. In Switzerland, officials said flames triggered a flashover, killing at least 40 people, prompting an investigation. Tesla's annual sales fall for second consecutive year, losing its position as the world's top EV maker to Chinese rival BYD. Tesla registrations dropped in Europe except Norway, while BYD's global sales rose to a record. Let's start with the top focus now, viewers. Iran's United Nations ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani has written to the UN Secretary General and the President of the UN Security Council, urging them to condemn unlawful threats towards Tehran from United States President Donald Trump amid ongoing protests in the country. This comes as Trump had earlier threatened to come to the aid of protesters in Iran if security forces were fired on them. Iravani called on the UN chief Antonio Guterres and members of the UNSC to unequivocally condemn Trump's reckless and provocative statements, describing them as a serious violation of the UN Charter and international law. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also condemned Trump's comments as dangerous and reckless. Meanwhile, top Iranian official Ali Larijani warned that US interference in domestic Iranian issues would amount to a destabilization of the entire Middle East. Now, joining me in this discussion is Adrian Calamil, who is a terrorism scholar, and he joins us from New York. Thank you very much, Adrian, for joining us in this discussion. What's your opinion of the ties and how do you think it's going to proceed from here? Is any escalation also likely after ties clearly deteriorating?
Well, thank you for having me, Kriti, and good evening to all your viewers.
Good morning.
As far as
here in India,
as far as Trump's or good morning, yeah, in India. As far as Trump's statements, they've already, the Islamic Republic, just during these last set of protests, have already killed, I think, somewhere to at least 9 protesters that are confirmed, and nothing has been done. What the Iranian people want to know is that America is behind them in their struggle against this regime. What they don't want is a repeat of 2009, when Barack Obama did not support the protesters and let them be brutally slaughtered in the streets. As far as Larijani making statements, who else? Pezeshkian, Araghchi, whoever it may be, You look at Larijani, he's actually making threats, direct threats. Um, these are protests that have taken on for 6 or 7 days. What the Islamic Republic fears is that the people they're done. They finish up. They're finished with this. The regime also knows that over the 12-day war, the Islamic Republic had their nuclear capacity significantly reduced, as well as their ballistic missiles. The next thing that was on that target package was the IRGC bases, the Basij bases, the repression forces. And if there were any type of military action taken, it would be taken out on these type of bases. Whether that happens, I don't know. I don't foresee it right now. I expect the Iranian people to take back their country, but what they need is the support of the U.S. What they don't need is the UN caving into the Islamic Republic saying U.S. is breaking international law when the Islamic Republic of Iran breaks international law at every single turn.
And Adrian, what's your assessment of the economy of Iran? How do you see it picking up? After inflation is all on a rise, and then the real to dollar has fallen very significantly. Protests are raging. Do you think the economy could see an upturn, and what really needs to be done for that?
No, the economy is at absolute tatters, and it has been for a long time. From 2018 to 2020, you saw Weimar Republic inflation, a reference to the interwar period during World War II. What you see now is this inflation. You see the middle class investment disappearing, and also you see the regime trying to build back what is their military capacity and not worrying about the people. And we also have to remember that the IRGC controls about 70 to 80% of the economy. So with that being said, I don't see them being able to make an economic pivot. And that's not the only thing that needs to happen to make these, to change the minds of the Iranian people. There has been government misrule and corruption throughout, failure to adapt to true economy, external trade, nepotism and meritocracy, central government, military overextended. It is the internal toxic stew for collapse, and the regime's looking at it right now. Things such as even going into a possible succession crisis. Ali Khamenei is near his death. He is a very old man. And the question is, who's going to take over from there? And there's, of course, the cultural, societal unrest. So economic problems are one big part of, I would look about 8 different categories where the regime is I can't see themselves digging themselves out of this.
All right, thanks for your perspective on that, Adrian, but do continue to stay on with me. Moving ahead, viewers, let's bring you news from Switzerland over the deadly fire there. We're now learning that sparklers that were placed on champagne bottles are believed to have caused that fire at the bar in the Swiss ski resort of Crans, Montana. Authorities say the sparklers likely came too close to the ceiling, triggering the blaze that killed around 40 people and injured more than 100. Investigators are examining fire safety measures, ceiling materials, crowd capacity, and whether emergency exits were accessible. Victims are still being formally identified using disaster victim identification procedures, with many injured remaining in critical condition. Rescue aircraft and helicopters have transferred severely burned survivors to specialized centers across Europe. Witnesses describe horrifying scenes, saying they are traumatized after seeing victims engulfed in flames. Families continue to wait anxiously for news as Switzerland prepares for a national day of mourning. Let's listen in.
Ce qu'on a vu déjà, on était extrêmement choqués parce que on est arrivé Au tout début, en fait, on est arrivé au tout début de l'incident. Les pompiers et la police n'étaient pas encore arrivés. Au début, on a vu une grosse foule et des cris. On a vu des gens taper aux vitres du bar, en fait. Et là, on a tourné la tête. On a vu des gens brûlés, mais avec plus de cheveux, des vêtements vraiment... En fait, ils avaient plus de vêtements, ils étaient tout brûlés. Ça faisait vraiment peur et
All right, and joining me in this discussion is retired Major General Sudhakar Ji, who's a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joins us from New Delhi. Very good morning to you, General Sudhakar, and thanks for joining me here at News X World. Sudhakar Ji, Swiss fire safety now under review. What should be the lesson learned?
Good morning, Kriti. Thank you for inviting me for your show, and Happy New Year. I think this
Happy
is
New
the
Year.
first
Yes.
sitting session I'm having with you. It's a tragic incident, fire accident. My heart goes out to the bereaved families, and we pray to God to bless the departed soul to rest in peace. And very unfortunate, but my mind also goes back to what happened in Goa in India in the recent past, I think in
Yeah.
December
Yes.
2025. Also, a similar incident took place some in Hong Kong, if I recall correctly, sometime in November 2025, because at Wong Fuk Court,
Yeah.
Hong Kong,
Yeah.
Wong Fuk Court, okay, there was a similar type of fire accident. And also my mind goes back to 2017 in London. There was Grenfell Tower which caught fire under similar accidents. And if we look at turn the pages of the history, we would do well also to turn back towards the historical perspective of such accidents, even in the superpower USA way back in 1903. And it was the Iroquois Theatre. The fire started from the screen which was hanging on the stage, and how 600 bodies. You see, the Crash Montana, so far 40 are accounted for, 40 dead, Goa 25, Hong Kong 161,
Yeah.
London's Grenfell Tower 72 dead, Chicago Iroquois Theatre USA 600, 1903. So what does it indicate? It highlights the following issues as per my analysis. First and foremost thing, the owner, whoever is responsible for creating this infrastructure or asset, he has to be held accountable and responsible. And the owner himself has to be morally accountable to himself. Is he doing the right thing by using the right construction, right infrastructure, right kind of a material? What is emerging from all these fire accidents is that more often than not, there has been a casual attitude by the handlers, or some kind of a very cheap inflammable cladding. In most of the cases, cheap Hong Kong and Goa, cheap inflammable cladding, as also in London, this has come to the highlight. And third and most important thing is the electrical fire because of overloading. Okay, but in the instant case in Crans Montana in Switzerland, I personally feel that it is the casual attitude, the waitresses, what is emerging from the open source is that on the bottle of champagne, you don't actually load the champagne bottle. Okay, candle is fine, but you don't have the fireworks under the ceiling.
Yeah.
The ceilings are wooden ceilings. You don't have fireworks inside the closed ceiling or the closed building. This is definitely total negligence, total casual attitude. And even if it was there, somebody from the owner side or the manager or the CEO, he should have checked what kind of proceedings, what kind of actions, how the celebration of New Year is to be conducted, who's going to serve what in what manner. These are the things which demand for eye for detail, so as to avoid innocent lives who are celebrating the revelers who are celebrating the New Year's Day. In my opinion, every country deserves to have a very accountable and a very effective government inspectors. They have an important role. The inspectors, they need to go on ground, check periodically, like it happens in India, so as other countries like Europe, it is, they're very, very stringent. I am but very sorry, but I don't know why the inspectors do not catch on to these points which I have highlighted. If there is any deficiency, any shortcoming, they should time and again repeatedly bring out this to the notice of the owner, have it in the checklist of the actions to be taken by such kind of infrastructure or the property dealers. From time to time they must enforce that the cheap inflammable claddings are not used. For example, the aluminium casings are
Yeah,
very
yeah.
dangerous. Aluminium is meant for a particular place and job, not for inflammable cladding that melts with excessive heat of 2000 degree or more. It melts, and behind or below the aluminium is the wooden casing that catches fire very fast. The wood towards the Europe is different, the wood towards India and other places is different. So therefore I feel that there is a lot to do as far as the fire hazards are concerned. I think we need to collectively, or maybe individual nations will do well by going into the details and taking preventive measures so that such kind of accidents do not recur in future and innocent lives are not lost in such kind of occasions. Back to you, Kriti.
Certainly. Thanks for your points there, Sudhakarji, and for joining me here in this discussion. And with that, viewers, we're going to proceed. Now, we're also getting a news from Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky has proposed appointing the first Deputy Prime Minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, as Ukraine's new defense minister, praising his abilities in developing the drones and digitalization needed for the country's defense. Fedorov has also served as Minister of Digital Transformation, and his appointment must be approved by Parliament, as he will be replacing Denis Shmyhal. Zelensky has said that Mikhailo is deeply engaged in the drone line initiative and works very effectively on the digitalization of state services and processes. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky and Mikhailo Fedorov have responded. Let's listen in.
Вирішив змінити формат роботи Міністерства оборони України. Новим міністром оборони України я запропонував стати Михайлу Федорову. Михайло глибоко займається питаннями щодо лінії дронів, працює дуже результативно в цифровізації державних послуг.
Да, ну війна сьогодні технологічна. Кожного дня відбуваються зміни в технологіях і на полі бою. З'являються нові БПЛА, якісь інновації в застосуванні БПЛА в комплектуючі.
I now welcome Matthew Wadham, who is an American journalist from Washington, in the discussion here.
Hi there.
Hi, thanks Matthew for joining me. Matthew, how do you see Fedorov's proposed appointment? Do you think he is the right candidate for the position of the defense minister at a time when the nation is almost in its fourth year of war?
I think he seems like a promising choice. He's viewed in Ukraine as somewhat of a technology wizard. He was supposedly involved in convincing, for example, Elon Musk to allow Ukraine to use Starlink satellites to provide people with internet, provide people with broadband services. And he was essential in setting up, as Minister of Digital Transformation, he set up a platform that Ukrainians use to allow to access IDs, government services, passports, and so on, so that they can access these services on their smartphones. And so this is he's a technology heavyweight and has connections to high-tech leaders throughout the world. And even though he's pretty young, I think he's in his 30s, pretty young to be a senior government official. He's viewed as someone who brings who's bringing energy to Ukraine's effort to sustain its war effort, which has been more or less mired in a stalemate recently with Russia.
All right, well, I guess then we'll watch out how his appointment goes, and if it's approved by the parliament. Would you say he'd get the backing that's needed?
Would I say that he's going to get the backing that's needed? You mean in the Ukrainian parliament?
Yes.
I can't really say, but I don't see why they wouldn't approve him. I'm not sure what the internal politics are in their parliamentary system, but they still, people are weary of the war in Ukraine, but I think they still have confidence in their president, and if President Zelensky is saying this is the right guy for the job, chances are he is going to get confirmed to the position. He's done so much already to help digitize the government in Ukraine. He's also been part of the effort to beef up its drone warfare against Russia. He's just viewed as an important figure, and it's pretty hard to imagine him not, barring unforeseen difficulties, it's pretty hard to imagine him not ascending to this high post.
In there, I'm also joined by Adrian Kalaman, and the discussion continues to stay on with us. Adrian, thanks for continuing to stay with us. What's your assessment of Mikhailo's proposed appointment?
Well, I'm going to have to defer to Matthew on this. He's more up on the Ukraine, at least on the Ukraine has to make these appointments. As Matthew said, Ukraine is war weary, but the Russians are too, and I think that's one part that we fail to overlook is that the Russians. They're having to make up for a manpower issue. They're having to make up for a firepower issue. Zelensky knows that, and and I think Trump's finally coming along that he realizes that a lot of this comes down to Putin, and Zelensky can make changes, he can make agreements, but at the end of the day, Putin has shown absolutely no signs of wanting peace, as far as I can see. There are early overtures to him, and I think the relationship and Trump's kind of growing weary of Putin's games in trying to bring this conflict to an end.
All right. Once again, thanks then, Adrian, for continuing to stay with us. And with that, viewers, let's also bring you some news from Saudi Arabia, which has called for Yemen's southern factions to attend a dialogue in Riyadh following deadly airstrikes and a surprise push for independence by UAE-backed separatists. In a statement, Riyadh said a comprehensive conference would be held to bring together all southern groups to discuss what it called just solutions to the southern cause. The Saudi Foreign Ministry said the invitation was issued by Yemen's internationally recognized government. The move comes as the Abu Dhabi-backed Southern Transitional Council, or the STC, pushes to declare independence and form a breakaway state in Yemen's south. The group has seized large areas of territory and announced a 2-year transitional process to create what it calls the State of Saudi Arabia. STC chief Aidarus al-Zubaydi said a temporary constitution would remain in force for 2 years, followed by a referendum on self-determination. He warned that if talks fail or military action is taken against the STC, all options remain open. Meanwhile, separatists say Saudi-led airstrikes killed at least 20 people on Friday. The Saudi-led coalition was formed in 2015 to push back Houthi forces in the north, but after a decade of war, Yemen remains deeply divided. Alright, let's now bring you some tech news before we wrap up the bulletin. Now, Tesla's annual sales declined for a second consecutive year. Tesla has lost its position as the world's leading electric vehicle maker to a Chinese rival hit by rising competition, the expiry of US tax credits, and brand backlash. Amid a 28% rise in global EV sales last year, BYD surpassed Tesla in annual sales for the first time, driven by rapid European growth that widened its lead over the US rival. Tesla registrations declined across much of Europe but jumped in Norway, where record sales contrasted with a shrinking market share in rest of the region in 2025. BYD told that sales outside of China climbed to a record 1 million vehicles in 2025. The company has said it aimed to sell as many as 1.6 million vehicles outside China in 2026, though it has not disclosed an overall sales target. Tesla is under pressure after US EV tax credits ended, slowing demand and pushing deliveries lower than expected. Despite a slowdown in vehicle deliveries, Tesla shares rose in 2025, further boosting Elon Musk's wealth. That's all we have time for. Thanks for watching NewsX World. For all international news and updates.